Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it feels highly personal, but it's also intensely strategic.
Mm-hmm.
We are diving into that paradoxical moment when you find something incredibly valuable. Could be a key connection, maybe a critical resource, or just a game-changing piece of knowledge.
Right. You found it. That's the starting point.
Exactly. Found it, now what? Do you stash it away? Or do you maybe share it?
And this is the absolute moment of truth that our source material really zooms in on.
Okay.
We've pulled together, a whole collection of research, stuff from organizational psychology, economics.
Even philosophy, I saw.
Yeah, ancient philosophy too. And what really emerges, the big conclusion, is that this choice, it's not just some simple moral quandary.
Right, not just should I be nice.
Not at all. It's actually a fundamental strategic decision. And it immediately starts dictating your long-term success, how robust your network is.
And ultimately your potential for impact, like real impact.
Exactly. Exponential impact.
Okay, so the sources, they kind of distill this conflict down. They use this powerful medical analogy, right, to describe the opposing reflexes.
They do. On one side, you've got that self-limiting impulse. They call it the allergic reaction.
Allergic reaction, okay.
Which basically translates to found it, hide it. Simple as that.
Got it. And the other side?
That's the expansive, the healthy response. They term it the love vaccine.
The love vaccine. I like that.
Yeah. Or simply found it, don't hide it.
So our goal in this deep dive isn't just the slogans, right? We need to really get into it.
Yeah, we need to dissect why that immediate impulse to hoard, why it's almost like chemically and psychologically dangerous for your future.
Dangerous. Wow.
Yeah. And then, flip side, demonstrate the strategic and actually mathematical superiority of operating from a place of, well, generosity. Radical generosity, but intentional.
Okay. So the mission is basically showing how sharing isn't just nice, it's the only viable path to, genuine abundance.
That's the core argument we're exploring today.
Okay, let's start unpacking this allergic to love pattern. Understand its immediate costs. It starts simply enough, right?
Usually does.
You just stumble upon that amazing thing, that perfect lead, that breakthrough idea, maybe an opportunity that hasn't even hit the market yet.
Yeah, that gem.
And for so many people, the instantaneous reaction, the default, it's just
Yeah.
lock it up. Like what did the sources call it? A dragon hoarding gold.
That image, the dragon hoard, it's so critical because it really suggests this irrational possessiveness over something that doesn't even need physical protection, usually.
Right, we're talking ideas, contacts.
Exactly, non-material assets.
Mm-hmm.
And this reaction, it's usually driven by one of two core fears, basically.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first there's the obvious one, fear of competition. If someone else gets this resource, my advantage shrinks.
Standard zero-sum thinking.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And second, there's this fundamental desire for absolute control. Like absolute control over the resource. They want to be the only way in, the bottleneck.
Ah, the gatekeeper impulse.
You got it. And the sources, they are incredibly clear about what happens next, the consequence of that lockdown.
Yeah, they use that really vivid image that the gift, quote, rots in the dark.
Right. But here's the kicker. It's not just the resource, the idea, the opportunity that decays.
What else?
Your reputation. It starts to rot right alongside it.
Ouch. Okay, explain that.
Well, think about it. If the value of knowledge or an opportunity often comes down to timing, right?
Sure, timeliness is key.
So if you lock it up until it's old news or expired, well, you got zero benefit from it yourself. But the bigger cost, it's relational.
How so?
You very quickly become that person, the one people just stop sharing with.
Because nothing comes back out.
Exactly. Why would they? If you're operating what the sources call a value vault, this place where opportunities go in, but they never ever come out, why would the network keep feeding you?
They wouldn't. They'd bypass you.
You've essentially isolated yourself. Strategically speaking, it's suicide.
That strategic isolation, it links directly to this assessment of networking economics in the sources, framed through the eyes of this character they call the clown father.
Right, the clown father.
He sounds interesting, not exactly friendly.
No, definitely not benevolent. He represents that purely cynical, transactional view of network value, like the harsh internal auditor of your social ledger.
Okay, so what's his take on hoarding?
It's blunt, really blunt. He basically says, nothing's uglier than a miser with a miracle.
Wow. A miser with a miracle.
Yeah, he sees this hoarding thing through a pure business lens. If you find this miracle opportunity, this amazing thing, and you just keep it locked away, you don't just look selfish.
What else?
You look petty. And maybe worst of all, you look strategically inept. Like you don't understand how value actually works.
So what's the key insight from this clown father guy?
I think the most important nugget really is that reputation. It's built entirely on circulation.
Circulation, not possession.
Exactly. The value isn't in the inventory you're sitting on. It's in the flow of resources that you help move around. If you become the bottleneck,
You shrink your own value.
you diminish your own value, precisely. In a network, you are only as valuable as what successfully flows through you to help others get where they need to go.
Which explains why the sources say hoarders stay small.
Inherently small, yeah. While the genuine sharers, they build empires. Because the resources you hold back, they don't actually maintain your advantage long term.
They just reinforce your limits.
Exactly. There's this failure analogy they use that really stuck with me.
Oh yeah, what is it?
It's like, don't be the person guarding an empty gas tank while the rest of the convoy is running dry miles behind you.
Huh.
And you might have found the tank, sure.
Right.
But if the whole network, your whole convoy, collapses because your peers stalled out, or your little isolated supply of fuel, it doesn't actually get you to your destination any faster.
You need the group, the collective momentum.
You absolutely need it. You're stranded alone, even with your horde.
Okay, so if the dragon horde is the action, what's the mindset behind it? The sources dig into the psychological roots, right? They mention this trauma pattern.
Yes, often tracing this behavior back to growing up in scarcity. This is really critical for, self-awareness for the listener.
How does that work?
Well, if you were raised in an environment where resources felt fundamentally limited, maybe money or emotional support, even educational opportunities,
You learn that sharing is risky.
you internalize this deep fear that sharing literally equates to loss because the pie feels finite. If someone else gets a slice, that means less for you.
So the typical reaction becomes, just hold on.
Hold on tight.
Yeah.
To anything valuable.
Yeah.
Until it decays or becomes irrelevant. Why? Because the emotional risk of letting it go just feels way too high.
You're prioritizing that feeling of security, even if it's false security.
Exactly. Prioritizing the psychological comfort of possession over the actual strategic benefit of letting it flow, of dissemination.
And this is where that terminology they use comes in handy, like the scarcity lens.
Right. When you view the world that way, through that scarcity lens, abundance itself starts to look like a threat.
How so? A threat.
Yeah, because every opportunity to share, every chance to collaborate, it gets perceived as an act of self-sabotage, not mutual enhancement. You're trapped in this zero-sum game mentality in your head.
And that zero-sum thinking, that isolation, it inevitably leads nowhere good.
Nowhere good at all, which is why the sources offer this really powerful reflection tool. They call it the 5-year check.
The 5-year check, okay.
It basically forces you to project the ultimate long-term cost of this hoarding behavior.
I think, you listening really need to spend a moment with this question because it's kind of painful, honestly.
It can be.
The question is, will holding this back still look smart when no one calls you for opportunities?
Oof. Yeah.
What the 5-year check is asking you to imagine is, okay, fast forward 5 years. You've successfully guarded every secret, hoarded every contact, kept everything close to your chest.
You want the hoarding game.
Right. Only to realize the phone has stopped ringing, like completely.
And the reason it stops ringing is crystal clear, right? You've signaled consistently to your entire network that you're either inaccessible or just unwilling to play ball, unwilling to participate in that collective growth dynamic.
You cut yourself off.
Completely cut yourself off from that vital exchange, that reciprocal flow. And the market, the network, well, it just finds other routes. It finds other, more collaborative nodes.
So all your brilliance, all those resources you hoarded.
They become irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because they're not circulating. They're not in play. That's silence, that lack of calls. That's the ultimate symptom. It means your reputation, strategically, has fully rotted.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the dragon horde. Pretty bleak picture. Now let's talk about the cure. The love vaccine.
Yes, the antidote.
And what I like about this prescription from the sources is that it immediately focuses on micro actions, small things. It moves away from that paralyzing fear of making some huge, risky gesture.
That's key. Yeah. The very first actionable step is super concrete. Commit to sharing the win, whatever it is, with at least one person who can actually use it today.
Today, not tomorrow, not next month.
Right now. While the resource is fresh, impactful, and this is absolutely crucial, the essential component is offering it without expecting immediate payback.
Oh, okay, hang on. I have to jump in here. I got to play devil's advocate for the listener who's maybe skeptical.
Go for it.
Let's say I just found a really rare, high-value lead, something amazing, and I just give it away to a competitor maybe, or even just a peer, and I don't ask for anything back right away.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't that just expose me? Isn't that, I don't know, just bad business? Isn't that naive?
See, that's the critical distinction the sources make
Yeah.
between transactional sharing and what they call generative flow.
Okay, transactional versus generative.
Right. If you share expecting immediate payback, that's not really generosity, is it? That's basically debt creation. You're just setting up a quid pro quo.
It keeps that scarcity mindset going.
Exactly. It keeps you locked in that same transactional loop. But the sources argue pretty forcefully that operating without the expectation of an immediate return, that fundamentally changes the whole nature of the relationship.
Oh, what does it do?
It activates network trust, deep trust. It signals you're playing the long game, not just looking for the next quick win.
So the ROI isn't necessarily an immediate tit-for-tat favor?
No. The ROI is the building of a robust, resilient network. A network that protects you, feeds you, supports you for years to come. That's the real return.
Okay, that completely shifts the guiding principle then. The sources frame it.
All right.
What was it? Information is like sunlight.
Yeah, exactly. Information is like sunlight. It works best when you let it shine.
Sunlight locked in a box doesn't really do anything.
It doesn't nourish anything, right?
Yeah.
It has to hit the open soil, the network, to make things grow.
Yeah.
So the mindset shift is profound, moving from protection to propagation.
Protection to propagation. I like that.
And this propagation mindset, that's what defines the coach's DO list in the source material.
Okay, what's on the DO list?
It emphasizes moving away from scarcity, where you see generosity as a loss, and starting to genuinely see abundance as, well, potentially infinite.
So the actions are?
Very specific.
Yeah.
Promptly sharing wins, like make it a reflex. Trusting the network effect to actually work its magic, and really maintaining that posture of offering without strings attached, no hidden agendas.
And this allows for what the sources call the healthy alternative.
Yes, which is sharing strategically, but for mutual growth.
Yeah.
It's not naive, it's intentional. It's the conscious choice to trust that giving actually creates more flow rather than somehow subtracting from your own little pool.
And what becomes possible then when you make that conscious choice?
The sources are really clear on this. Stronger networks, obviously, more connected networks, a constant state of increased reciprocity, things just start flowing back naturally, and ultimately significantly amplified impact, both personally and professionally.
You basically shift from being just a solo agent, kind of looking out for number one,
Right.
to becoming the hub of a powerful, thriving ecosystem.
That's the goal. And to really grasp how this works, we need to look at reciprocity flow in action. The sources give this perfect case study example they call love in action.
Okay, love in action. Lay it on me.
Right. So imagine you stumble across an open grant opportunity, and it is absolutely perfect for, say, a friend's early-stage research project, like tailor-made.
Okay. The old instinct might be to hesitate, right? Maybe think, what if I need that contact later? Or what if the funding pool is limited?
Exactly. The dragon hoard instinct kicks in. But with a love vaccine approach, you don't hoard it. You don't worry the funding agency might run dry. You send it immediately.
Maybe even add a personal tip.
Yeah, maybe even with a specific personalized suggestion on how they could frame their proposal for that particular grant. You add value.
Okay. So you send it. What happened?
Your friend applies, and boom, they win the grant. That's the first payoff, right? The initial share pays off dramatically for them.
Right. Good for them. But
Right.
where's the reciprocity for me?
Here's where the flow really accelerates. Maybe a year later, that friend, who's now well-funded, maybe more connected because of that grant, they're at a conference. They overhear a conversation about a critical, maybe off-market acquisition target.
Yeah.
And it perfectly aligns with your long-term business strategy, something you'd never find on your own.
Okay.
What do? They remember your generosity. That trust is there. They immediately send that lead to you.
Ah, so the loop closes.
It closes, but notice they didn't owe you that lead, transactionally speaking. But that initial generous act created this deep, non-transactional bond of trust and goodwill.
So the value didn't just return, it came back bigger, different.
It amplified. It transformed from a simple grant tip into potentially a game-changing strategic business opportunity for you.
That amplification is really key then. It often comes back in a totally different form, maybe a more relevant currency for you at that moment.
Exactly. And we see this in that other little story they tell, the street luxury anecdote, too.
Right, the car and the watch.
Yeah. Someone hears about a super rare, off-market classic car deal, knows it's perfect for a buddy who collects them, sends the link, No strings.
But he gets the car. Happy days.
But he gets the car. Then, months later, completely unrelated, that same buddy gets wind of, like a silent auction for a dream watch. The exact model the original sender had been searching for years with no luck.
And makes the connection.
Makes the connection.
Yeah.
The currency exchanged wasn't cash, right? It was utility value, maybe some status, but the emotional and personal ROI for the watch seeker, massive, totally unexpected.
So it really illustrates how the network rewards that trust, but with tailored, personalized opportunities, things that actually matter to you.
Precisely. If you're seen as a generous node, someone who shares good stuff, people genuinely think of you first when they encounter specialized value that fits your interests.
Okay, so to really cement this shift, this move from hoarding to propagating, the sources give us a few more analogies, right, to help understand this value circulation idea.
Yeah, 3 really good ones. First, the core metaphor. It's like planting a seed in open soil where it can grow.
Okay, open soil is the network.
Open soil is the network. Sunlight is the value you share. You plant the seed, the idea, the contact, and in the right environment, it multiplies into a harvest.
And the contrast is?
Sharp. Not like locking it in a jar until it dies.
Yeah.
A seed locked away, it just becomes dried out, sterile, useless to everyone, including you eventually.
Right. And then there's that driving analogy, again, the convoy one. That really brings home the systemic risk, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it really does. You're in that convoy, crossing the desert. You find the only gas station for miles. The conscious choice, the love vaccine choice, is to immediately find that location and tell the entire convoy where it is before anyone runs out.
Because the alternative, just keeping it secret.
If you keep it secret, maybe you're thinking you can charge a crazy price later, or you're just scared someone else will get there first and use it all up.
You risk the whole mission.
You risk the entire infrastructure, the whole convoy, collapsing. Sure, your tank might be full for now, but a convoy that stalls out in the desert, that's incredibly vulnerable. And your solo journey, trying to make it alone, becomes infinitely more dangerous than the collective, well-fueled push towards the destination. Sharing the location ensures everyone gets there. What's really powerful about this deep dive, I think, is realizing this principle of sharing. It's not just some, trendy business hack from the 21st century.
Right. It feels deeper than that.
It is. It's a foundational truth. And it's echoed across literally millennia of human wisdom. The philosophical pillars supporting generosity are surprisingly consistent across different schools of thought.
Okay, let's start with Stoicism. The sources pull out this idea paraphrased as, what we give away, we keep forever. That sounds counterintuitive.
Right.
Especially today, like in a digital economy where IP is supposedly everything. How does that work?
Well, the Stoics had this really clear understanding of non-material value. Things like knowledge, reputation, wisdom.
Utterly intangible.
Exactly. They understood that these things aren't diminished when you share them. In fact, they're amplified. They get cemented into your identity.
So if I share knowledge...
Knowledge doesn't actually leave your head, does it?
Yeah.
But what does happen is your reputation as someone who has accurate, useful, generously shared knowledge gets internalized by the network, by everyone you shared it with.
Ah, so the reputation becomes the asset I keep.
That reputation becomes the durable asset. You keep it forever, essentially. Even if the original piece of information eventually becomes outdated, your credibility, that's baked into your social metadata now.
Okay. And shifting east, what about Buddhism?
In Buddhism, generosity, the concept of dana, it's literally the first perfection, the first step on the path.
Class 1, wow.
Yeah, it's considered absolutely essential for personal development. And it's seen as a foundation of genuine freedom because the act of giving is viewed as liberation.
Liberation from what?
From that deep attachment to material things, to outcomes, to control, which is the very root of that scarcity mindset we talked about in Section 1. Giving breaks that attachment.
Okay, and then bringing it into psychology, Jungian psychology.
Yeah, the connection back to our diagnosis in Section 1 is really clear here. Jungian psychology directly links that hoarding complex, that miserliness,
Yeah.
to a refusal to grow.
Yeah.
It actually uses the phrase that this behavior actively stunts individuation.
Stunts individuation. That sounds serious. What does individuation mean for the listener?
It's basically the lifelong process of becoming a fully integrated, unique, coherent self. Becoming authentically you, unburdened by external pressures or those internal complexes like the scarcity complex.
So if I'm constantly holding back, calculating, protecting resources out of fear,
You're staying small. You're actively inhibiting your own full development. Because true individuation requires you to act freely, authentically, generously in the world. The hoarder remains trapped, really, by their own defenses.
which connects back to that quote from Plutarch the sources mentioned.
Perfectly. Plutarch's truth. What we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. That profound internal decision, that achievement of choosing to trust in flow over fear, that's the inward achievement.
And it manifests externally.
It manifests externally as a reality that feels more supportive, more abundant, because you've changed your interaction with it. Which leads us really to this undeniable philosophical truth bomb that just cuts across every era.
Okay, what's the truth bomb?
A gift that's hidden is a gift that's wasted. Period.
Simple. Powerful.
Okay.
Okay, and the sources don't stop at philosophy. They show this amazing alignment across different spiritual traditions, too.
Yeah, it's quite staggering, actually. It proves this insight about resource flow isn't just philosophical. It's deeply ingrained as a social and theological truth across cultures.
Give us some examples.
Okay, so in Christianity, you've got Matthew 5.1, 15. He uses that analogy of utility, of visibility. You are the light of the world. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl.
Right, the purpose of light is to shine.
Exactly. The purpose of light is illumination. So if you possess light value, knowledge, resources, you have a kind of responsibility to use it for its intended function.
Yeah.
To serve, to guide. Hiding it literally denies its purpose.
Okay, what about Judaism?
In Judaism, there's this very clear social consequence laid out for hoarding essential goods. Proverbs 11.26 says, "One who withholds grain, the people will curse him."
Withholds grain, like a vital resource.
Exactly. It speaks directly to the community impact. If you withhold something critical to grain just for your own short-term personal profit or security, you trigger collective resentment, you contribute to social failure, and the result is a clear communal curse, essentially. That scarcity trap hurts everyone.
And Islam.
Islam offers this beautiful parable of multiplication. In the Qur'an, chapter 2, verse 261, the example of those who spend their wealth is like a grain that grows 7 spikes.
Ah, so generosity isn't subtraction.
It's fertilization. 1 unit of resource, given freely, doesn't just get replaced, it returns 7-fold. It's basically the theological endorsement of that multiplier effect we saw in the Love in Action case study.
Wow, okay. Any others?
Yeah, Buddhism, again, from the Dhammapada.
Yeah.
If you light a lamp for someone, it will also brighten your path. That idea of mutual benefit.
And then there's that simple, beautiful Irish proverb that just sums it all up, really.
Right. A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. Your light isn't diminished at all. But the world is now demonstrably, measurably brighter because you share.
That consistency is pretty amazing. Across philosophy, across different faiths.
It's profound. And it leads us right into the science of flow. Because there's actually a neurological basis for why this sharing behavior builds strong, resilient communities. The sources analyze this using what they call the matrix lens.
The matrix lens. Okay, intriguing. Sounds like neuroscience.
It is. It details the neurological reality of what happens when we share value. And this is where it gets really fascinating because it's not just nice thoughts, it's actual chemistry.
Okay, tell me more.
Sharing value, genuinely giving something useful to someone else, it actively activates the reward centers in the brain, both in the giver and in the receiver.
Both sides feel good.
Yes. When you give, you get a boost of trust hormones. Specifically, they mention oxytocin, that lovely bonding hormone. It reduces your own stress, lowers your social defense mechanisms, makes you feel connected.
Okay, so the giver benefits chemically.
But here's the critical part. That same hormonal boost happens in the receiver too. They get the value, the resource, whatever it was.
And they also get the oxytocin hit.
Yes, which cements a feeling of trust, goodwill, and connection towards the giver. It creates this incredibly powerful, self-reinforcing feedback loop. Give, receive, trust, repeat.
So this biological mechanism is basically designed to encourage cooperation.
Exactly. It's specifically designed to foster cooperation, lower group anxiety, make people feel safer together. And this directly contributes to network resilience. When trust hormones like oxytocin are flowing freely through a network,
The network is stronger, less defensive.
much stronger, less defensive, and way better equipped to tackle complex problems together. Collaboration becomes easier, almost automatic.
So the biology actually confirms that moral social truth the sources state.
It does. Communities grow when resources flow.
Yeah.
It's like a closed system, really. If you clog up the flow by hoarding, the whole system, including you, starts to suffer from, like, neurological and relational decay. The trust breaks down. Okay, so we've journeyed from diagnosis through philosophy and spirituality, even into the neuroscience of sharing. Now let's ground all this theory in some really high-stakes, real-world examples. Examples that prove the economic superiority of sharing over hoarding.
Where do the sources point us?
They provide this incredibly powerful case study. Open source software development versus traditional hoarded code.
Wow, like Linux. Or maybe Git, things like that.
Exactly. Look at the undeniable, world-changing success of projects like Linux or Git or the Apache web server. These things became the absolute foundational tools for the modern internet, for modern technology.
And how did they do that?
They became massive, resilient, and universally adopted, precisely because their creators shared the intellectual property.
Yeah.
They shared it freely. They opened it up.
Which allowed anyone to contribute.
Allowed for global input, constant scrutiny, rapid iteration, bug fixing, all from a massive distributed community. The core lesson here is just profound.
What is it?
Hoarded code, the kind locked tightly behind corporate firewalls, tangled up in proprietary secrets, it very rarely changes the world on that scale. World-changing ideas almost always require mass contribution, collective validation, that open flow.
So the economic model is just fundamentally different.
Completely different. The hoarder's economic model is based on trying to maximize the value of the scarcity of one thing they control.
Right. Keep it rare, keep the price high.
While the sharer's economic model, it's based on creating the conditions for the exponential generation of new things. New ideas, new applications, new value built on top of the shared foundation.
Which ties into that perspective from the marketer in the sources.
Yeah, the marketer's take is simple and direct. Don't guard the gold, mint more.
Mint more. Focus on generation, not protection.
Exactly. Focus your energy on generating the currency of value, not just obsessively protecting your existing little stock of it.
Okay, but I still have that skeptical voice nagging. What about real proprietary secrets? If I'm, say, a startup, and I have this one unique algorithm, this one competitive edge, how do I apply the love vaccine then, without just giving away the crown jewels, the very thing that makes my business viable?
And that's a fair question, and that's where intentionality comes in. The sources aren't advocating for naively giving away your core defensible IP that constitutes your entire business model.
So what does sharing mean in that context?
It means sharing things around the core. Sharing access, sharing insights, maybe relevant connections, adjacent knowledge. Things that facilitate the growth of others in your ecosystem without undermining your fundamental competitive advantage. It's strategic generosity.
Okay, so it's not about giving away the secret sauce, but maybe sharing the recipe for the bread that goes with it.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You help others succeed in ways that complement, rather than directly compete with, your core offering. And this is where the coaches don't list becomes really helpful.
Right. Clarity on what not to do. What are the big don'ts?
They're all driven by that internal fear we keep coming back to. So don't hoard purely for control, just to be the bottleneck. Don't delay sharing until the resource is already useless or expired.
Yeah, that's the worst. Sharing old news makes you look out of touch.
Totally damages credibility.
Also,
don't fear competition over collaboration reflexively. Really weigh the potential benefits of working together, which are often far greater than the marginal risk of competition in many cases.
And the last one.
And finally, the big one. Don't operate from the fundamental assumption that generosity is always a loss or that nobody will ever return the favor. You have to break that core belief.
This seems like a good place for that WAV lens analysis the sources mention, to check for that internal conflict.
Absolutely crucial for spotting cognitive dissonance. WAY, again, stands for words, actions, and feelings. It's a quick self-assessment tool.
Okay, walk me through an example using WAY.
Right. So let's say your words constantly praise collaboration. You talk a big game about abundance, teamwork, supporting others.
Okay, sounds good.
But then your actions. Maybe you consistently forget to forward that perfect contact to a colleague. Or you subtly downplay a peer's success in a meeting. You act like resources are scarce, even while you talk abundance.
And the feelings.
Ah, your feelings. That little uncomfortable knot in your stomach when someone else gets praise or lands a big win. That envy, that tightness, that reveals the truth. Your feelings show you're still operating from fear and scarcity, despite your words.
So the WAVE lens demands alignment. What you say, what you do, and how you feel all need to point in the same direction.
Towards flow.
Towards flow and genuine generosity. And when you achieve that alignment, when you really start sharing authentically, that's when you get to the happy part, as the sources call it.
The happy part. What's that?
It's the long-term benefit, and it's entirely self-reinforcing. When you genuinely share value, your reputation transforms. It doesn't just become reliable, it becomes a powerful magnet for more opportunities.
Well, magnet. How does that work?
It's that trust mechanism we talked about. Because you initiated the trust, you provided that initial value without expecting an immediate quid pro quo,
People actively want to feed you information. They want you in their circles.
They see you as a valuable, trustworthy part of the network.
Exactly. They trust you with their own scarce resources, their best ideas, their most valuable contacts. So that reciprocity flow, it doesn't just return, it actually accelerates. Because the network itself has flagged you as a high-trust, low-risk, high-value node, good things just start finding you.
Okay, so for listeners who are thinking, right, I get it, I want to start this shift, but how? What are the practical first steps?
The sources give some really simple, low-stakes ways to just start training this muscle. Building the habit of abundance. The first is the therapy tip.
Therapy tip. I give away one resource this week. Just one. With absolutely zero expectation of return. No tracking it, no scorekeeping, no mental ledger of who owes you what.
Just pure, clean generosity.
Pure and clean. Just to break that ingrained hoarding habit, feel what it feels like to just let something go freely.
Okay. And there's daily practice, too.
Even simpler. Daily practice. Share one useful thing today. Could be an interesting article, a relevant contact, a quick insight you had. Anything useful to someone else, share it. And again, crucially, don't track it.
Just make sharing a small, useful thing part of your daily routine.
Exactly. It trains the generosity reflex. It slowly rewires that scarcity mindset into an abundance mindset through repeated low-stakes positive actions.
And we should always keep that final warning in mind. The clown tip.
Yes. Very direct, very visual.
Yeah.
Regardless of how successful or abundant you become, remember, if your pockets are too full to give, they're too full to receive.
You got to make space for new stuff to come in.
You have to create that energetic space, that actual space sometimes, for new flow to enter your life. And that requires ensuring the old flow, the value you have, keeps moving out to others. Keep the circulation going. #hag outro.
Wow. Okay, so we started this deep dive looking at that a really profound conflict, right, between hiding value and sharing value when you find it. We framed it as the allergic reaction versus the love vaccine. And we've seen pretty clearly how that scarcity trap, that hoarding instinct, it leads straight to isolation, to strategic stagnation, eventually to relational decay.
Yeah, and it's not just opinion. It's confirmed by psychology, by philosophy, by economics, even by neuroscience, as we saw.
The big shift, the really profound strategic shift, is moving away from that fear tied up in perceived ownership.
And moving towards facilitating flow, facilitating multiplication, trusting the process.
So the two critical reflection questions that we really want you, the listener, to carry forward from this deep dive are these. First, what am I keeping to myself right now primarily out of fear? Be honest.
And second, flowing from that. How might sharing this specific resource right now actually pay off later? Not by diminishing me, but by enhancing the whole network, which ultimately benefits me too. Think ecosystem, not just you.
Because our sources, they leave us with this really stark principle. They call it the final law, kind of non-negotiable for success in today's networked world.
And that law is simple. What you hide dies. What you share multiplies.
It's that clear cut. The choice is stark. And the results, as we've seen, are pretty predictable depending on which path you take.
And that feeling you get when things are multiplying, that confidence, that feeling of being, rich enough to give freely, that's the vibe. That's the energy of our theoretical soundtrack for this principle.
Which was pass it on, right?
Yeah. Funky, confident, generous. That's the state of flow, the feeling we're actually aiming for when we live by this rule.
Okay, so that leads us to our final call to action for you, the reader challenge prompt. It's simple, direct, based right on the sources.
Find one resource today. Just one. Could be small. A book recommendation you know someone would love, a helpful contact, an article that sparked an idea relevant to a friend's project.
Find that one thing and give it to someone who can genuinely use it today.
And here's the key part. Do not keep score. Don't track it. Just give it.
Then take a moment. Reflect on the feeling of making that gift happen, that feeling of creating what the source is called a light leak, letting opportunity, letting value shine beyond just you.
And just sit with the possibility. Consider what unforeseen, maybe amplified returns, perhaps in a completely different currency, like trust, or future opportunity. What might that small act of intentional generosity trigger in your life? Maybe this week, maybe next year.
Go create that flow. Find something valuable and pass it on.